My dearest Will, day-to-day life in the village hasn't changed too much. Even the river seems sad and empty. I should think the widows and mothers of this country have made the greatest contribution of all with their beloved husbands and sons. That's the real cost of war, Will. Here we are, feeling the first joys of peace. I just thank God you are coming back and we can carry on with our lives. We're the lucky ones with a future and a life together in a wonderful world of peace. That's the best Christmas present I could ever wish for. So many young men will never have a family or walk across peaceful fields like we will ever again. The first Christmas of peace is nearly upon us, and at long last this terrible war is over. You look so handsome in your uniform, but it was always hard to think of you bearing arms. A baker with a gun, what does it all mean? We are so blessed, your ever-loving wife, Olive.
You can't tell the story of the owls without telling the story of Pill. Why did this choir suddenly sprout up out of nowhere? What was their drive? Originally, we believe they were formed to raise money for the troops coming back who were blinded by gas injuries.
My grandfather was a village baker, Billy Holbrook. He went off to fight in the First World War and was taken prisoner, but came back, carried on his business, had 5 children, one of which was my mother.
In the village, we have 55 men who gave their lives and who are named on our war memorial, and a lot more went to war and came back.
Robert Gladstone Griffiths was a vicar who came to Pill in 1917. In 1918, Robert Griffiths took it on himself to go over to France during the conflict, and he was exposed to horrendous sights, the thousands upon thousands of casualties coming back from the war. And it's probably without a doubt that he came back from his experiences in the war a changed man. So come 1919, after the demob and the Treaty of Versailles, men started to arrive back in the village and the local area. Everybody would have been aware of them, missing limbs, blinded. So Robert Griffiths, the only thing he could do, which was to round up the boys in his boys' school and take these youngsters out carol singing. They adopted the name the Owls because the youth group in the village at the time was called the Owls. And they went out and they sang around the village, in the streets. They kept going until 1927 without a break, and Robert Griffiths was dispatched by the church to a new job. He was told to pack up everything in Pill and relocate to Farnborough in Kent. This is where the Owls could have fallen over. This could have been the end of it. These young lads took it upon themselves to keep it going, and I think that's marvellous. They didn't give up. They carried the tradition on. The 4 pioneers, as I call them, were Bertram and Morris Gerrish, Charles Thomas, Eddie Duck, and they're still going strong by the 50s, 60s and 70s in some cases. One of the newer Owls who joined in the late 1930s was a chap called Herman Ansel. Herman came from a German family that had moved over to the UK. The Owls went out every Christmas from 1939 right through to 45. Herman went out every night. His brother said the reason he did that was it was the only way he could stick 2 fingers up to Adolf, and it was his small way of getting some payback. There was one instance during the war outside St George's Hall in East Gordano. Herman and the rest of the guys, led by Morris Gerrish, were singing, and they just launched into Silent Night when all the ack-ack guns opened up around them. There were guns going off in Fayland, in Portbury, in Avonmouth Docks. Searchlights lit up the sky, and all the time the Owls continued to sing Silent Night. They couldn't hear a word, they couldn't hear themselves, but they weren't going to be beaten, and they were determined to finish their set.
The people of Pill are wonderfully cantankerous, very warm. They own their village, and that's important for people to know, that if you come from Pill, you do have a sense of ownership. That doesn't mean that we don't welcome other people, because we absolutely do.
You don't go to Pill by accident. You've got to go there on purpose. There is no reason to go to Pill unless you live in Pill or you know someone. It's sort of a little knot next to the river that's grown up independent of everywhere around it. The word Pill, or Crockern Pill to give it its full title, means pottery wharf or pottery creek. Crockern is the Latin for crockery, and the Pill is an Anglo-Saxon word that is used to describe an inlet or a creek. There are plenty of Pills around the country, but there's only one Crockern at Pill.
The ferry crossing goes back at least 1,000 years. In the more recent times, Pill Ferry was an essential way of getting across to go to work at Avonmouth. 500 years ago, 1497, John Cabot left Bristol to find the New World, and there was a man called George Ray who was a pilot from Pill. And he's different from a lot of these explorers because being a pilot, he knew his way back.
I think it's quite interesting that even now there are 8 drinking establishments all within walking distance. So there is something in our culture that pubs are places in which we socialise.
So the Owl's idea of going around the streets and also going into every pub to sing, that's no mean feat. There was a lot of pubs, and it was a good way to raise money. And the people who had a few beers, they would pay a few pound over to hear a few carols.
Joyful and triumphant, O come ye to Bethlehem.
Through the years, my contention is that the parish has grown immune to all criticism. They've got this resilience about them, and they've got this desire, this mission to thrive and survive. And as a consequence, they know that if they want anything done, they're going to do it themselves. Well, I frequently say, and I'll say it again now, apart from the day that I married my wife, it was the best day's work I ever did in coming to live in Pill.